or he is in an unusual or dangerous situation. This behavior is often observed when the dog is in a new place or meets strangers. The barking in these cases may be deeper and rougher, and the dog may repeat it many times in a row. It may also be related to the dog's need for protection or its attempt to warn owners of possible danger. Dogs can bark for various reasons, depending on their breed, age, and character. For example, small breeds tend to bark more than large ones because they may feel more vulnerable, or she's reacting to a change in the environment. Barking can also be associated with certain dog habits, such as waiting for food, playing, or walking. However, it is important to be attentive to the frequency and intensity of barking. If a dog starts barking constantly, and for no apparent reason, it may be due to problems in the animal's behavior or emotional state. Sometimes dogs start barking due to boredom or lack of physical activity, and then it is important to provide the pet with the necessary games, walks, and mental activity. Thus, barking is an important part of a dog's communication, and understanding its various forms will help owners better understand their pets. Barking can be both a positive expression of emotion and a signal of anxiety. It is important to observe the dog's behavior at the moment of barking and take into account all the factors that can affect its mood. After all, every dog is unique, and its barking is a way to convey information and create a connection with its owner. Topic 2. Growling as a means of communication. Growling is another important sound that dogs use to communicate. Unlike barking, growling is most often associated with a sense of threat or discomfort. When a dog growls, it can warn that it senses danger or that something is wrong with it. It may be related to a stranger, another animal, or even a situation that is causing her stress. Growling may be a sign that the dog is feeling anxious or unhappy and is trying to set its own boundaries. However, it is important to remember that growling does not always mean aggression. Dogs can growl in completely safe situations when they are playing or coming into contact with other animals. For example, many dogs growl when playing with other dogs, demonstrating their defensive position or showing that they are ready for active play. In such cases, growling is not a threat and is part of the normal interaction between animals. Growling can also occur when a dog feels the need to defend its territory, its food, or other resources. This behavior is observed especially in dogs, which tend to be protective and protective. For example, if a dog growls at another animal when it approaches her food bowl, this may mean that she is trying to warn him not to get too close. However, growling is not always a demonstration of aggression. Rather, it is a signal to others that the dog is ready to defend its borders. For example, dogs may growl at strangers who invade their space or at other animals that pose a threat to them. This behavior is part of their self-preservation instinct and defensive response. When a dog growls, it is important to carefully monitor its body language and general condition. Growling in combination with an aggressive posture, pintail, or exposed teeth is most likely a signal of aggression. In such cases, it is important to be careful not to provoke further aggression. In other cases, growling may be associated with a feeling of fear or anxiety, especially if the dog looks tense or alert at that moment. Growling can also be a way of communication between dogs. When several dogs meet, they may growl at each other to establish a hierarchy or to show their willingness to defend their territory. This often happens in the process of socialization, when dogs teach each other boundaries and rules of behavior. In such situations, growling can serve as a warning or a sign that the dog feels threatened. In addition, growling can be caused by physical discomfort. For example, if a dog is in pain due to injury or illness, it may growl to express her displeasure or to warn the owner not to touch her damaged area. This is a signal that the animal feels discomfort and wants to avoid further irritation. Dogs can also growl when faced with some kind of situation that causes them stress. For example, if a dog is not used to new people or animals in the house, it may start growling. To express my concern, in such situations, it is important to help the dog adapt and create a comfortable atmosphere for him so that he does not feel threatened. In order to correctly interpret the growl of their dog, it is important for the owner to pay attention to the context and take into account other factors such as its behavior, body position, and environment. For example, if a dog growls, but its tail remains relaxed and it does not exhibit an aggressive posture, it is most likely just a way to express its concern or desire to set boundaries. In general, growling is an important communication tool for a dog, and interpreting this sound correctly can help the owner better understand what his pet is experiencing in a particular situation. Topic 3. Why does a dog growl at people or other animals? If your dog is growling at people or other animals, it's important to assess what exactly is causing his reaction. Sometimes growling can be a sign that a dog feels threatened. For example, she may be afraid of another animal or a stranger. This happens especially often if the dog is not used to new people or situations. If the dog is not used to the new environment, he may start growling to express his alertness. For example, a dog may growl at a stranger, especially if he is approaching too fast, or trying to enter the space that the dog considers his own. This is often the case in dogs that are not socialized with humans or other animals and are not used to a variety of situations. In such cases, growling may be part of the dog's normal defensive response. She's just trying to warn a possible threat and set a boundary. This behavior is especially common in dogs that are strongly attached to their owner and protect him. A dog may perceive strangers or other animals as a threat to its owner. Therefore, she growls to create distance and warn of possible danger. However, growling is not always associated with a threat. Sometimes dogs growl at other animals or people because they feel insecure or afraid. This happens especially often if the dog is not used to certain situations or experiencing stress. For example, a dog may growl at another animal if it feels that its territory is being violated or if it encounters a competitor for resources. It is also worth noting that growling may be associated with territorial aggression. Dogs are territorial by nature, and if a dog feels that its territory is being violated, it may start growling to show his displeasure. This is especially evident when a dog meets other animals in his house or yard. In such cases, the growl can serve as a warning to other animals to leave her space. In some cases, the growling may be related to a struggle for resources, such as food or toys. When dogs sense that someone might take something important away from them, they can start growling to protect those resources. This often happens when several dogs interact, when one of them tries to take a toy or a bowl of food from another. This behavior is especially pronounced in dogs that experience a sense of scarcity or compete for the owner's attention. However, it is important to remember that growling does not always mean aggression or threat. Dogs can also growl in games when they communicate with other animals or people. In these cases, growling is part of normal communication and is not accompanied by aggressive behavior. For example, when a dog is playing with other dogs, it may growl, showing its joy and willingness to continue the game. This is a normal part of socialization. And it is important to distinguish such cases from growling, which occurs due to fear or threat. To properly understand why a dog growls at people or other animals, it is important to pay attention to its behavior in general. Look at her posture, muzzle expression, tail, and other signs that can give you clues about what exactly causes the growl. If the dog looks tense, with a pinched tail and tense jaws, this is most likely a signal of fear or aggression. If she looks relaxed, with her tail in a normal position and a smiling expression, growling may be part of the game. In addition to behavior, it is important to take into account the external environment. For example, if a dog growls at strangers in your house, it may be due to its territorial instincts. Topic 4. How to react to the barking and growling of a dog. The reaction to a dog's barking and growling depends on the reason why it makes these sounds. Dogs use different sounds to communicate, and it's important to understand exactly what they're trying to convey by their behavior. Barking and growling can be both positive and negative signals, and an incorrect reaction can increase a dog's stress or cause unwanted behavior in the future. If a dog barks with joy, for example, when you come home or it wants to play, you should respond to its behavior accordingly. In this case, active play or attention will be the best response. You can play with your dog, spend time with him, or just chat. It is important to remember that barking for joy does not require punishment, but on the contrary, positive attention to the pet strengthens your bond and promotes further interaction. However, if the barking is related to anxiety, or stress, it's important to react more carefully. When a dog barks out of fear or anxiety, it is important to try to figure out what exactly is causing its discomfort. In such situations, you should not immediately scold the dog or ignore its behavior. This can only increase her anxiety and lead to further stress. If the dog is constantly barking due to stress or anxiety, the first step is to try to calm it down. Use a calm, soft voice to indicate that everything is okay and the dog can calm down, or an attempt to defend their territory. In such cases, you should not immediately try to correct the behavior or punish the dog. Instead, try to calm her down in a calm, confident voice and encourage her to behave calmly. It is important to create a safe space for the dog where he will feel protected. This is especially important if the dog is growling due to fear or a stressful situation. At such a moment, it is very important to show patience and understanding, not punishment. Instead of punishing, it is better to calm the pet down and try to eliminate the source of stress. If the dog continues to show aggression or constantly growls in certain situations, it may be worth contacting a professional. Professional dog behavior trainers can help you understand the causes of aggression and suggest methods for correcting behavior. Sometimes growling or barking can be symptoms of a deep problem that require specialist intervention. It is very important to remember that growling and barking are the dog's ways of warning you that he feels threatened or uncomfortable. Our task is to help the pet cope with this, not to make the situation worse. Constant punishment can only worsen the situation and create tension in the relationship with the pet. It is best to act with understanding and patience, creating conditions for the dog in which he feels safe. If you want to help your dog learn how to respond more appropriately to stressful situations, it's important to gradually introduce her to what's causing her anxiety, starting with gentle and safe situations. This will help the dog learn to cope with difficult situations without stress and fear.